As rescue efforts in Houston continue in the aftermath of Harvey, we're reminded of another catastrophic storm. 12 years ago today, Hurricane Katrina slammed the Gulf Coast with winds of 145 miles per hour. That storm forced tens of thousands of people out of their homes and killed 1,200 others. And as East Tennesseans prepare to help in Texas, of course, we are reminded of those who offered precious help in Louisiana and Mississippi all those years ago.
One of those volunteers, former Knox County Sheriff Tim Hutchison, he joins us now, and we're just kind of reminiscing. Hard to believe it's been 12 years, but we were watching this all unfold on air, and you and members of the helicopter fleet decided to mobilize. Talk about that decision, and were you fully prepared for what you would encounter?
No, we weren't. We weren't prepared. I got a phone call early one morning from Harry Lee, who was the sheriff of Jefferson Parish, which is half of what you know as New Orleans, and asked if I could bring some helicopters down. So I called one of our chiefs, and I said, go to Sam's Wholesale or somewhere, get us several boxes of things that won't melt, like crackers and all, that we can put in each bird, and get us 2 cases of water for each bird, so when we're refueling whatever, we've got something to eat. Well, it's turned out that's what we lived on for about 2.5 days. We got down there, there was no food, there wasn't anything there. The city wasn't prepared for what happened, so it couldn't take care of its own, much less anybody else.
2 questions. Number 1, how long were you all down there? Number 2, in that amount of time, there had to be so many memories, but is there one that stands out more than any other?
We were there 11 days. What stood out the most, I guess, is my first flight in. Didn't hear anything about Mississippi, and we're flying along the coast of Mississippi, headed there, and for the first almost mile inland, there were no homes. There were driveways, there were swimming pools, but there were no homes, and there was a debris field about a mile in, where the surge took all that in, and then we got to Lake Pontchartrain and flew across part of Interstate 10. All the concrete was gone. And when we first got to where we could see New Orleans, it was a reflection on the water from Lake Pontchartrain about 18 miles to downtown. The whole place was flooded, and people on top of the roofs everywhere. And
that's when you all went sweeping in to rescue them from on top of these roofs.
Yes, we started in. Jefferson Parish had 1 helicopter. The Coast Guard had about 6 or so. The Navy had 4 or 5 that first day that we got there, and it grew each day thereafter. By about 7 days, there were about 500 helicopters there. But it took us 11 days to get everybody rescued and off of the top of the houses.
And even then, it was by far from over. The aftermath, the rebuilding took years. Watching a lot of the coverage, the devastation, it has to remind you of Hurricane Katrina. Also Floyd, you sent a fleet to respond to Floyd as well.
Yes, when Floyd came ashore in North Carolina, did the same thing. It just parked short of Raleigh and dumped a lot of water and flooded everything over there. It was a lot of the same thing. This storm, though, it's dumped so much rain. Moving water is a real problem here on this one. You have rapid water response rescues, which we didn't have to have there in New Orleans. It was all just sitting there, and you were waiting on it to go down. But this is moving, rushing water. So a lot of their infrastructure is going to be washed out. The roads are culverts. Anytime that the water is traveling underneath roads, it's going to wash those things out. They've got a real problem on just fixing their infrastructure, their road infrastructure, to start moving around once it's over.
What is your advice to folks who want to do their part? You've been to these places that have faced such great devastation, and the volunteer spirit here. We want to help. From your vantage point, what's the best way to help?
Well, you contribute if they can't go. If they can get hooked up to some rescue organization and go, be prepared to live in the worst conditions. I don't have to tell you, you came down to Mississippi.
I remember it well.
You were with us there, and be prepared for the worst conditions, horrible heat, high humidity down there, and very little food. I mean, they're with FEMA there, the federal government's responded, so there'll be water and military type meals, but that's about it. And that's all you're going to live on. Another big problem that they have is, you can't find a restroom that works. You can't find, until they start bringing in a lot of the porta potties and things from other parts of the country. Everything's a problem. Everything that we take for granted, they have nothing there.
Sparse. That's it. It was certainly sparse, and we certainly know that's the case in Houston. We thank you once again for coming and remembering what happened 12 years ago, and certainly remembering what's happening right now. Former Knox County Sheriff Tim Hutchison, thank you.
Thanks.